gentlemen, welcome back, Geek Freaks. We are here for another edition of Reading with Geeks. We're doing a book club. We have a very special book club today. We are reading Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith. Now, we got this book a little bit early. It doesn't release to go on sale until April 27th. And the main reason we got it and we chose this book is because our good friend, you've seen him on the show or heard him on the show before, our good friend Tom Travers, huge fan of Barry Windsor Smith. He was asking if we had any interest in doing this review, and we did. And it was an interesting story to say the least. But I'm TC. I think I may have skipped over introductions, and then of course we have JJ over here.
Up, guys?
Toy Story as well. So it's almost like a guest. I think this is our first guest for a book club. No, we've had guests for book club.
We've had him before.
You're
so special. It's okay.
Yeah, he's like part of the show. People are like, it's weird when Tom Travers isn't on the show. So people who don't know Barry Windsor Smith, he's kind of best known for his work on Conan, Machine Men, and I think probably the biggest thing, at least the biggest thing I know him for, is the Weapon X storyline that he did I think it was 1990, right? 1991. He's won countless awards. He was inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame in 2008. Tom, do you have anything to add with Barry? Did I cover it? Or is there stuff I missed out on?
Yeah, I mean, Weapon X is probably his biggest mainstream work. But yeah, Conan, he's renowned. Like if you're a comic art person, you're into comic book art. I guess, and if you grew up or you read the books from the 80s and the 90s, Barry Windsor Smith is like a big name on the landscape.
I mean, his list of the things he worked on is incredibly long. He's done a lot of independent stuff too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I think but Monsters is his first book in 16 years. He hasn't done anything prior to this, right?
Yeah.
And he's been working on it for a long time too, right?
Yes, I think the story itself actually it began as a Hulk story.
I remember you telling me that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it was proposed to Marvel as a Hulk story. I think all the way back in 1984.
Wow.
I think it's that old. That's what I read.
It was like 35 years in the works.
Yeah. And I've been waiting for the book to come out since at least high school or college, early college. So,
So even after Marvel didn't take it or whatever, it's been known that he wanted to release this book and he was trying to get it done.
Yeah. So he proposed it as a Hulk story, which, you can certainly see the tones of that in it. I'm sure
100%,
in that context, but, he proposed it to Marvel. I don't know the details of what happened, but, for whatever reason, it didn't come to fruition with Marvel, and it became its own thing, and he's been sitting on it for all these years, and now we finally have it, and it's crazy. So, yeah.
All right. That's interesting. I'm sure we'll dive into that stuff a little bit more. Before we get started, though, we do want to thank Fantagraphics Publishing for allowing us to have this early access to review this story. We will be talking about a decent amount of stuff, relating to the story. If anybody does not want to be spoiled, maybe, hold off until after you read the book. But I mean, I don't think there's anything super spoilery about this. We're not going to give out major details. We don't want to.
There's no big reveals or anything like that. So
yeah, it's just I think this is a story that needs to be read on its own to really experience anyway. Even if we tell you things that happen, you're not going to appreciate it unless you read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be ruined either, I don't think, for you.
I don't think so. Yeah. All right. So what I will do, though, is I want to turn it over to Tom to give us a little synopsis, as best he can do for, the story.
All right. It's a big task for me.
I'm sorry if I put you on the spot.
Jim, you're
welcome to our show. We will make you feel uncomfortable.
I'm the biased reviewer in the bunch. I'm bursting at the seams with excitement for this project. So, but so Monsters. I'll try to give my synopsis of it. It's the story of many different characters, but and how their lives all interconnect through a series of events. But it really, I guess, focuses on Bobby Bailey, and he ends up being part of a United States government military experiment, similar to Weapon X, perhaps. So there's some connections there. And goes through all the different characters that are tied into his life and his childhood experiences, and we go through the government program itself and the people tied to that, and it all comes together. It's kind of, I mean, it's got so many different layers. It is hard to encapsulate into like a simple.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think we'll go into this more when we kind of discuss it. But it gives you, I really like the way they told the story. It gives you the perspective from a lot of different people, and it shows you like you don't really even get onto like how they're all connected until really the very end of the book, which is very interesting. I'll talk about the storytelling and stuff later, but it was really well done, at least on that part, the way the story was told. And it's just I'm trying to focus on not saying or
Yeah.
It's just I listen to myself and I'm like, stop it, you stop it. But yeah, I think you encapsulated it really well. There's a lot of different people. It is kind of centered around this Bobby Bailey, but it's more the people who have kind of shaped his life and people who have, come into contact with those people who have shaped his life, which really kind of brings this story together. And I guess the best thing to do is like, what's everyone's kind of like first impressions after reading this?
So
do you want to go? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So full disclosure, as I usually do for book clubs, I waited until last night to start this because I forgot. And I saw it. I was like, 370 pages. What did I do to myself? I'm not going to finish this.
And it's not a light 370 pages.
So I was like, all right, I'll try and read a little tonight. I'll read tomorrow. I sat down. I read the entire thing in one sitting.
Holy crap. Wow.
I unbelievably loved this book. This is exactly my kind of book. With the exposition. That's like I'm like, I read the superhero stuff. I like the superhero stuff, but I like different stuff lately, I find. So this like checked off every box for me. So I finished that and I was like, I need to read this again at some point, but not right now. I need to like let it, sit a little bit.
So I want you to follow that up though. Like what kind of feelings did like this book incite in you? I know that's not really something we've kind of dove into in the past. So it's something I think would really bring out like, or at least explain to people like, how it really made us feel would kind of.
Yeah. So at the beginning for this, it was mostly intrigue.
Yeah.
I find that for a book to capture me, at least I need to be intrigued from the very beginning. I don't like things that take 40, 50, 100 pages to get going. Right from the beginning, right from the first 25 pages, I was like, it made me interested in what's going to happen next. And it made me feel for this kid as the story went on, especially starting at a point in the future and then going back and then going back. And at like every stage where you kept going back, you feel a little more for him. I thought I really liked that like reverse narrative storytelling kind of, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I do like that when it's done well. Mm-hmm. Like how you're describing, and this does it really well. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm focused.
It's a hard thing to pull off for sure.
It is. You have to. I mean, I guess 35 years is a good amount of time to take to plan it out. But what about you, JJ? What were your first impressions and kind of like the feelings?
I'm gonna guess that it's not your kind of book.
It's not my kind of book. Yeah. I didn't like this book right off the bat. It took a lot for me to understand. And like I understand, what you said, Matt. The first 25 pages, it brought you in. I was totally lost through the whole book. Like it I don't like
the jumping around.
The jumping around. I hate that in a book. Like if you're going to write a book, I like keep it.
We talked about that on a book we recently did, I think.
We did, and it's just this one was a lot harder. And with the amount of dialogue, I mean, there was so much dialogue, and it was for me, it was very hard to keep track of what was going on. And I felt bad for this guy Bailey, but it was just the way he was started. It just kind of jumped into it, and I was, I kind of liked to have had a little more backstory at the very beginning.
You like it
a little more about this kid first. I know towards the end, you figure out, how do you get injure his eye, and I'd like to have seen that maybe a little bit sooner. But I know that in some books that ruins it. So, this was not my type of book. I struggled through it. It took a lot for me to grasp it, and I found myself kind of skipping a little bit because it it didn't keep me going on it.
And did you get like any did it incite any type of feelings or anything like that?
No, I think I was more annoyed at the fact that it just wasn't going as well as I thought it was going to go. You know, it just dragged for me, and it's just the whole confusion of it. I was confused a lot of times. Maybe that's my age. I don't know.
All right. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm curious as someone who's waited for this since high school. What you thought?
Yeah, I read the whole thing in like 2 days. Matt, I'm incredibly impressed that you read it in one night. That's insane.
Well, I also had to, so there wasn't. I had until today to read it, so I had to.
I read probably 220 to 30 pages the first night, so I kind of powered through a lot of it, and then the ending. I feel like the second half, the last 100 pages, kind of went a lot easier. I do kind of agree with JJ. It did kind of drag a little bit there in the middle, but no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I read it over a couple of days. And I had been anticipating this book, so I was really excited to check this out. So I guess that has to be said. But I loved it personally. I'm actually with comics usually I really love a one and done short comics. I like short term stories generally, to be honest. That's usually what I prefer to read, and I don't do a lot of huge, this is a 300 page whatever book. I don't typically enjoy that. It's not what I seek out to read for myself. But with this book, I really got into it and enjoyed it the whole way through, and just I found myself just wanting to read more. I was just really enjoying it, and I felt I understand. Jim's comments on the storytelling style of changing maybe the time periods and things like that can be a little confusing. The storytelling structure could be a little confusing at times, but I thought it worked overall though. And it pays off if you go through the whole thing. Personally, I felt it really paid off, and it's very. It's not a light read at all. There's a lot of heavy stuff going on in the story, and with the characters and everything. And but I enjoyed the experience overall, and really came away. Honestly, I was emotionally moved by this book personally in a way that I have not been moved by a comic book. To be perfectly honest, particularly the parts about the child abuse and things like that, and I don't have personal experience with that, thankfully, thank God, but I really felt something there I was really deeply moved by the work in those portions of the book, which I've been reading comics for many, many years, and I was not moved to that extent. So I was struck by that in particular, and then of course just the artwork and everything is just incredible. So I loved a lot about it. So
yeah, it was definitely a heavy read, and I'm mixed in between. I think what JJ was trying to say about the storytelling, I think that's kind of your cup of tea or it's not. I like it. I don't always like it. In this instance, I did like how the story was told. I thought the story was actually told brilliantly. The context was just so heavy, and for readings and comics, I generally don't go that heavy, and it made me feel very uncomfortable and depressed. It was kind of a downer of a story, really. And some stories are. I mean, it's just the nature of what the story was, and I there was tons of messages that you're supposed to be taking away from. There's a ton of different characters. I think the hardest part for me was the when it got to the point where it was the Janet Bailey, she was writing those letters, those very long-winded letters. Those were tough for me to get through, because I actually read all those. I took the time to read all those. Yeah. And even there's time when they were whispering, you had to zoom in to digitally we had to zoom in to kind of see those whispers were saying.
Yeah.
And even though I read it in 2 days, I did take my time with it. And it's just, I mean, some people, and I think this is just, the nature of the story, where terrible people, just like horrible people in it, and just taking advantage. Like the whole Destiny thing was really interesting, and like how everyone was intertwined.
Yeah.
Again, even though it's not my cup of tea, and I wouldn't even. I don't even think I'm going to have a grade until the end of this. Like, normally we give our, each book we do like a comic book grade. It's hard to like, I loved how it was done. It was just like what it was about was just like very depressing, and it definitely moved me emotionally. It was just like, geez, it was just.
I think it's meant to be depressing and dreary and
Oh, 100%.
It's totally meant to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's whether you like reading those kinds of stories.
100%, and I agree with you.
And I don't always like reading those. I really like serious stuff like that. But sometimes you just want to read, a Captain America story.
And I do like serious. And I like the kind of like mystery behind it. But then it just, and it was very graphic in certain points too.
Yeah.
And like a lot of what was said, you can tell like when he started writing it, like things were a little bit different. Like a lot of that dialogue was very like 80s, 90s dialogue. Like some of it, like you wouldn't really expect people to talk that way in a comic book, even about something that happened, back in the 60s and like, 40s to 60s when a lot of this took place. But I mean, so my second thing that I wanted to bring up was the storytelling. I think we've kind of, nailed that point home. But the artwork, what did you guys think about the artwork? I don't know, whoever wants to jump in first.
So I'll go the opposite direction on this. I really love the artwork. I love the pen type of style. Frank Cho does a lot of like ink pen, and I love the way that looks, and I love the artwork in this because it brings. I love the I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but
grittiness.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
black and white.
Yeah, it's just and that's what I love about comics too. Black. If you can draw a great black and white book, I mean, it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite things. But the whole pen style, I love that. Mm-hmm. And I did look at some of his other work that he done. The Conan. It's got the same style, and I get it. I see. He's a great artist. I love that part. The writing, it was legendary.
I didn't love all of it to be, I'm probably going to be a little surprising here on that. I think it had to be a black and white story, though. This isn't a book that worked in color. It's just, it needed that kind of, grittiness again, like we were saying. I don't think it would have worked with like color in this world. But there were some scenes like I would have liked, like the comic book scenes where like you see that he has like a comic book collection.
Yeah, Superman and Batman. Yeah.
I'm wondering if he had to get any approval for those, like because he actually draws like what they look like. Maybe he didn't use the logos, or that's probably how he got it. But I do love a lot of his work. I had like mixed reactions to some of it. Some stuff looked like it was really well done. Other stuff this is 370 pages or whatever. I don't know how many actual pages. I mean, this was a lot of art.
I think it was 360.
360. I mean, it's a lot. So kudos to him for, getting through that. And I can totally see, taking, putting less detail into certain scenes and, as opposed to others. But, a legend. You guys go. I don't know.
Mr. Artist, do you want to go next?
I think I've offended him.
No, I tried to be very just like I'm gonna be honest about it. I loved a lot of the artwork. There are moments where I agree with Tess what you're saying. Like not everything gets the loving care of everything else. There are panels where you're like, oh, it looks like you didn't really, go all the way with that, necessarily. Like there's a few drawings where, I wasn't necessarily blown away. But by and large, and for the number of pages overall, I think it's masterful work. It's beautiful stuff. And back to what Jim was saying too, with the pen and ink work, it's beautiful. With the hatching and the cross hatching, and it's just really wonderfully done.
I mean,
it's like old school cartooning that you don't see typically anymore in comics. You're not going to see this kind of stuff typically from a lot of artists these days. So it's really something special. And like we mentioned, this is like Barry Windsor Smith's first work in so many years. So it's like to have all this new artwork from him in like one massive dose is like overwhelming. Like as a fan of his, like I've been waiting for new work from Barry Windsor Smith for so many years. So I'm just like, oh my God, we have 300 something pages of his work. So, but it's been, yeah. So I really loved it overall. But it's not perfect, but it's overall, like it's like a 98% like excellent, excellent stuff in my view. I was very pleased with the artwork overall.
Very nice.
What about you, Toy Story?
Yeah, I love that black and white gritty style. I don't think you need, like JJ said, I don't think you need the color if you could, if you're drawing it the right way, or if you're drawing it in that style, and it worked beautifully. I think even the gory parts that were uncomfortable, I thought were unbelievably done.
And the shading and all that. Yeah, the shading and all that was just it was amazing to see that, especially the monster himself, when he's standing upright and you see his somewhat naked body, but the shading on it was just it felt you were, as you're reading the book, these people were there, like there was a lot, it was real stuff. And if you would have put color in that, I think it would have taken away, it would have been a whole different story with coloring, and I think it would have ruined it.
He definitely put everything in anytime he drew Bobby Bailey as like kind of like the monster. Those were all really beautifully done, and the detail, they didn't look beautiful. Like he didn't look beautiful, but he drew it very beautifully. So let's kind of get into like the things that kind of happened a little bit. And again, we won't go super detailed, but what do you guys take away as kind of the most memorable moments for you?
I'll start again on this. The middle part where Janet, I loved her whole sequence. I mean, I felt more connected to her than anybody else in the book. Here's a mom whose husband comes back from war, and he's got the whole war mentality in his mind, and it just never came back from it. And that felt real to me than anything else in the entire book. And like you mentioned before, the letters, that's where a lot of the heart I felt was in the book. Everything else, I didn't care about that. So if it was just that one part, I think I would have been a lot more happier. I like that story. I like that segment with her. Him growing up, and unfortunately, you've got child abuse in this, and it was a beautifully drawn and written out story for that section. And I think that was stuck most in my mind through the whole book.
Yeah, that was definitely the part that had the most attention to detail in terms of like storytelling. And
it was hard to read at times too, because you were emotionally attached to the mom. I mean, the mom took a bunch of abuse, and you had to feel bad for her and him, the boy, when he was a little boy.
I'm going to agree with you and go more specific on a specific moment. That shed sequence.
Yeah.
Was totally like, right in your face. That's the biggest takeaway I took from the book.
And I'm just kind of ask this. I don't know his backstory well enough. Did he like draw on like personal experience for this? Do we know, like Barry? I'm assuming we couldn't get Barry on the show, Tom. So you're going to fill in Barry Windsor Smith on this. I'd love to get to see if somebody would know like if that was true, and because it seems so. That was the part that seems so like personal, and that's why I think it kind of strikes you more, like, because it seems that it's not just like storytelling for the sake of storytelling. It seems like this is something that happened to a certain degree. I'm not saying exactly how it happened. It just seemed it read very personal, and that's why I got that feeling, and it was something I meant to ask like the group if anyone had known that, but it's something I'd like to find out at some point.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Barry Windsor Smith is a very private person. Like there's not much like he's kind of mysterious in a lot of ways.
All those British guys are. Yeah. And of course, one of the people who did a review for this already was Neil Gaiman, another strange fella.
So I don't know if he draws on personal experiences for this stuff. But yeah, it certainly has that feeling, right? Like it's almost like it's it's almost hard to imagine somebody like coming up with this stuff just from nowhere. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know much about his personal life experience. I have an art book from him, and it's dedicated to his parents, so he must have a decent relationship with his parents.
Okay. Listen, it could be
was not abusive, but
it could be somebody that he knew, or
yeah.
Maybe it was something that got resolved in his family. Who knows?
Yeah.
We can make any assumption we want until we know the truth, I guess.
Right.
So did you have like a moment of your own though from the book that kind of like stuck out?
For me, it was the whole Thanksgiving dinner sequence.
Oh
Yeah.
That was really intense. The storytelling I thought was awesome there. It was just super tense and really impactful. And I read later, actually, that as far as the Hulk story that was originally supposed to be, it was based around the Thanksgiving dinner. That was obviously an important part of this whole story for, from the beginning.
Got it.
In Barry Windsor Smith's mind or whatever. But yeah, for me, reading that part was like really intense. And also the similar to what Matt and Jim said, also like the parts with Janet and also exploring the Bobby Bailey's childhood experiences. That was really the most touching stuff, impactful stuff overall. For sure.
Yeah. I feel like the whole story, like there was so many scenes that just not as excited, but enticed emotion. Is that it? Enticed? Yeah, probably, right?
Invoked emotion.
There we go. That was that kind of invoked emotion. Like there's so many, like how you said, like during that scene, the tension that you could feel the tension. I mean, you felt all those moments. Anything you were supposed to feel like in those moments, they got the point across very well. I think, and it's weird. It's not just because it's the end, but the thing that really stuck out to me was like when they finally go to like that lab in Germany at the end. I don't remember exactly where they were. Like that part was just like, whoa! Like I didn't things were going, and that's probably, I feel like I got everything that was going on up until like that point. Those were like the things that like I couldn't pick up what was going on. And I'll kind of take this into like things left unresolved, which was, kind of the next thing I wanted to take on. I still don't know why the heck that crazy German guy starts shooting people. I don't know what, the father, Tom Bailey, like I don't know what it was that actually made him snap. Like he hears voices or something like that. Like it's interesting that I felt like that was the thing. I was like, what was it that made him snap? Because you almost like you hate him so much up until this point, but it's just like at some point you have to ask, like, is it really his fault though? Because how the story jumps around, you don't really have that kind of like, oh well, I get it. I feel sorry for this guy. You just he's kind of like the jerk. Like he's really one of the biggest antagonists, even though it's probably, this crazy, Friedrich, Colonel Friedrich or whatever. And that guy's a nut too. Like it's just, they had that other guy with him. I think it was Hans, the big, kind of muscular German officer. And it's just like, does he actually know the formula? He's like, oh, I took all the notes. But then, at the end of it, I was like, I actually don't know if he did take all the notes, and like maybe that's why they screwed this up so badly, on the experiment on, Bobby. And it was just those were the two things that I really felt I would have liked a little bit more closure or like explanation on, because I just don't like I was kind of wanted more on like what it was that made kind of Tom snap, because you get this picture from Janet again in the middle on how he's like, he's this great guy, funny guy. And then I don't know what the moment was. Maybe it was just being there. Like, why does he start like eating the hand and stuff like that? It's just like, I was like, what was the moment? Maybe I missed it. I don't know if you guys caught it, but it was.
No, I'm there with you. I totally, that's same thing with me, what made him snap, and because it was all confusing. I was there with you.
You're not supposed to know, I guess, maybe. Unless you guys got something that I missed.
Yeah, he goes completely insane.
Yeah,
and there really isn't
the whole part.
that I remember, there is no clear explanation for that. It's just kind of like, it just, I don't know. It just happens. Like maybe he's seen some horrific things that made him snap, but there's no like explicit explanation for that, unfortunately.
And even in that scene too, I love like how I think was it Elias's father or who in there, also McFarlane, and like he's like I get the feeling from this guy, he's off, we can't trust him, Dr. Friedrich or whatever. He's in this room, again, it smells like probably the worst possible smell you can smell, like, and he's just sitting there like no shirt on, missing a hand, just like this guy's not right. It's just I really like, I was so confused by it in the beginning, but McFarlane's character was really good too. And then, tying it into like, that was the only kind of like mysticism or like power that you got from the book, is that they had this like, I don't know what it was, hoodoo or voodoo or whatever they kind of called it in the story, but he had this power to like see things, and he passed it on to his daughter, and like that was a great scene at the end with all of them too. But it was interesting too. That was well done. The what?
It's The Shining. They have The Shining.
Yeah, that's true.
Power. Yeah, like some kind of weird mystical spiritual ability, which is it's an interesting mixture of these different genres and different ideas. Like
I would have loved to see what the storyboard idea was for this Hulk book now, because like the whole time I'm like Roth is like 100% General Thunderbolt Ross. Like, he's just like, all right, take the T and the H out, and we'll cover those two S's up.
Yeah. I wonder what the original length was for the Hulk book. I'm sure it was a lot shorter.
Yeah, you probably missed like all that middle part with Janet. Like that probably all goes out the window.
So he just went off into his totally own direction with the without the restraints of working for Marvel. Took this a totally different place.
It's funny too, because I've been reading, and I don't know if any of you guys are, I've been reading a lot of Immortal Hulk stuff, and it does kind of have like this feel, a lot of the stuff because apparently Bruce's father was also like a jerk, because I haven't read a ton of early Hulk. I don't know if they've ever gone into this in other times. I'm sure they have, but like he has like a terrible relationship with his father as well. So I could see this, if that's, if they've done this in the 70s or 80s, this would definitely kind of tie in to like that thought process. So it's interesting. Did everyone do like a most memorable? Anyone else have like any unresolved things? Toy Story.
I thought it tied together everything beautifully. Like you're going through it, and you think, what the hell does this have to do with this? But by the end, like it ties it in a bow perfectly. I think, at least.
Overall, yeah. Other than those two items, I was just that bugged me a little bit. I feel like they tied it up really well. Mm-hmm. Even like the Roth guy, they kind of like wrote him out with just like two panels. Yeah. He just like drowns in the swamp. I was like wait, he just weeds in the swamp and gets stuck, and that was it. I was like, okay. You look confused there, Toy Story.
No.
Oh, okay. You're just like, wait, why did I miss that?
No.
One thing I would have liked to have seen more of would have been like, I wanted more like of the Bobby Bailey monster stuff, I guess. Like
there was lots of that than I expected.
More Hulk moments, maybe.
Yeah.
Get those out. He's like, all these panels say Hulk smash. I better take those out.
That was my only thing. I was like, like there were some little moments, but nothing. I felt that aspect of things could have been more ramped up, but maybe it didn't fit this story correctly. But as a comic book fan and a fan of Barry Windsor Smith's art, I want to see him drawing like giant monstrosities and stuff like that. So
yeah, I get it 100%. And it's great too how he did so much of it in the background though. Like there's so many scenes where it's like, you think it, they're just acting like it's, kid Bobby there. But meanwhile, he's laying out this story with like this huge monstrous version of Barry, like sitting on the stairs, huddled up. And, he does the attention to detail, because you'll even see like, the stairs are smashed up from this like incredible size, or he's like sitting like in the corner, and you don't get him doing much, but you get like the drawing of him really well there.
Nice.
So I guess an interesting question is, who do you think the monster actually is in this book? Who wants to take that one first?
That's a tough question. That's a deep question. Yeah. Do you have an answer, or?
I mean, it could be more. So, I mean, I guess if you go back and like, who's really responsible for all of this, it's kind of like the Colonel Friedrich, right? I mean, he kind of sets all this in motion. I mean, sure, there's like the guy, the Major Roth, or whatever it is. He has, his responsibility in this too. And then the dad, he's definitely comes off as a monster. And that's the thing too. Like I wanted to know if it was something that Friedrich did to him or just he snapped, but the war could have done that to him. He's certainly a monster in this. I think there's more than one. I think the most disappointing thing is that, and it's part of his character too, is that kind of Jack Powell, who I don't think we mentioned him at all. He kind of like falls in love with, Janet, Bobby's mother, and he could have kind of intervened a little sooner than he did. And it's just like literally the last minute he saves Bobby, but not really. He kind of saves him and then kind of forgets him. And, he blames himself for sure, but I don't know where I was going with that. What was the question? I mean, if I were to pick like the mastermind villain of this, it's probably the Colonel Friedrich. He's like, he seems like the main guy, but the father too. He's he's such a bastard.
Yeah. that's where mine is. I would say the father. I mean, he really just pissed me off probably more than anybody in the whole book.
I know, yeah, and that was the part.
Besides the images of Hitler every so often,
yeah,
everybody hates Hitler, right? I mean,
not a good guy.
Not a good guy.
I mean, this wasn't so much about him though. Like, he was just the Nazis, yeah, but like, that guy's a Nazi too, but he's trying to play the system. This Friedrich guy is like, "Ooh, I'm gonna become rich." I love how he tells the guy his grand plan. It's like, "Oh, and I'm gonna kill you." He's like, "Ha, that's great." It was just like, and again, written so well. Like this guy's laughing like he's joking. Meanwhile, Friedrich's like, "No, I'm really gonna do this." I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have like a monster in mind?
I think like what you were kind of saying, like how it's almost like everybody in the story, or a lot of the characters in the story, have monstrous moments.
Well, that's why it's called monsters, right? And not monster.
Where they do something that is regrettable, at the very least. Some of them are like Friedrich is a complete monster, and Bobby appears to be a monster physically because of what he's gone through, but he really hasn't done anything.
But he's probably the one that's
he's the most,
the least monster out of anyone.
Right. Yeah, he's the most monstrous looking, but he's not a monster in his actual actions. But like even McFarland, Elias, he sends Bobby to the program, right? So that's
kind of like
which
slowly kills him.
Right, destroys him. So it's like, it's like you're seeing all these moments where people can be monstrous, and then there's a lot of redemption too, in the story eventually. But yeah, it's like it's like a field of different levels of who are the monsters and where's the humanity.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I see going on in the story.
And I think it's also like, I think even the 70s Hulk TV show kind of like touches upon this. It really suggests that there's a monster within all of us, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Interesting.
So I think we kind of covered a lot of the things we wanted to talk about. Did you guys want to focus in on any other characters, maybe any that we've kind of left out here? And I know I think we've touched upon most of them, but I don't know if there's anyone else you wanted to give some love.
I forget her name, but what is it? The Colonel's daughter, right? What was her name?
Oh, Nina.
I mean, she played a really important role in the very beginning.
Yeah.
One of those weird, confusing parts of what was going on with her. But yeah, I mean, she was in the beginning and the end too. So
yeah, she had I enjoyed that moment where you kind of see like, a good father and, with his kids, and they have like their moment. Meanwhile, like Bobby he never gets that moment. Even Jack can't like save him in time. And then and again, so well, the story, this is probably the best graphic novel that I've read in terms of storytelling. Again, the actual story, not my cup of tea personally. It's a little too depressing, but the way, even seeing panel by panel of like Jack's, when it all goes down and everyone dies, they're taking Bobby away and Jack's kind of sitting in the chair and you just see him kind of looking towards Jack, like scene by scene, and he's just like kind of looking for him to save him there, and just like he goes off to some orphanage, and that's like all she wrote kind of for him. But yeah, really well done, I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want to read it again.
I don't want to read it again.
Would you read it again, Tom?
Yeah, I'll definitely be reading it again.
Yeah, I actually ordered the book, so I'll be reading it when that comes.
I'm excited for the physical copy.
Yeah, nice hardcover.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking hardcover too, and it's got like definitely the most poignant scene in the book where they kind of like prop him up on that little crane thing and like so terribly stick like the flags in his ears.
Yeah. Speaking of characters, those two guys, the guys who do that.
Yeah, I don't even know what their names are. They were like,
I forget their names, but yeah, they're just like these obnoxious, crazy guys. Like,
and those were like two of the people where, especially in those early scenes with the government stuff, like the U.S. government, I was like, this is so like 70s, like 80s humor. Like you can just tell, like it's just so like I don't even know the word for it, but it's so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I like those two guys in the big. I like those two guys. They were fun. They were like the comic relief.
Yeah, they were funny for sure. I mean, it's just like I don't know, sophomoric or not really sophomoric, but something like that. Like such child humor. It's just like even as like a soldier, like who really does something like that? All right, cool. Is there any like kind of closing thoughts that you guys want to say about the book before we go into like grades or anything like that?
Nothing for me. I think I'm good. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah.
Said a lot about it. I think personally, I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, you're smiling ear to ear about it.
All right, Tom. So, do you know how the comic book grades work? I'm just curious because I know you're not a graded comic book guy.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Yeah. On the scales and stuff like that. Yeah. All right, so we'll let you go last since it's kind of your book. What we'll do is we'll start. We'll do counterclockwise, starting with JJ, and we'll end with you, Tom.
All right.
Come on, the number should probably go from lower to higher anyway.
JJ. Order, yeah.
As a whole,
as a whole,
it's a stretch. I'm gonna give it a 1-0.
What?
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay.
Wow.
I will never read this book again.
Wow.
I don't want to see it again. I again, like I said, I didn't like the story. It's not my book. It's not my book.
That's
I would never pick this up.
I would give it a 4, but
I will never pick this. This is not a book I would see on the shelf and be like, oh no, I would never do that. I would move on. Sorry. I mean, I'm going to be honest.
Oh, that's good.
And this has nothing to do about Barry Windsor. This has nothing to do. He's a beautiful artist. I love the art, but as a whole, I got to go with that.
All right. Well, I won't be the lowest. I'll tell you that much. So again, the story wasn't really for me. It wasn't kind of my genre of storytelling. But the book, the way the story was told, and most of the art was so well done. I'm probably gonna go 7.5 for me. I think it was just it was so well told. I mean, I can't give it any lower than that, just on the storytelling alone. And then, some of the moments of art.
I feel bad. I feel bad.
It's fine. You're just being honest. I think that's all right. Yeah, I think that's, I'm probably giving it 0.5. I might have gone 8.0 if I loved all the art. But, all right.
Did we
Tom,
lose
did
Tom?
you cut out?
Did we lose Tom?
No, he's there.
I get some crazy.
He's a little fuzzy.
Right. Yeah, I think you're probably just having some connection.
You want to get my video on that? So, what do you want?
Yeah, I'll go first while his connections. So, Very rarely. I can't remember the last time I sat down with a book and read it in one sitting. It made me feel uncomfortable. It was depressing. I love those kind of books, and this checked off everything for me.
Isn't there a word for people like that?
I don't know. What is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, but I'd absolutely read this again. I loved it. 9.4, easy.
Wow.
Easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna hear from Tom here.
I think we lost Tom. So I'll speak for Tom. I'm going to give it a 2.
We're gonna be left on this cliffhanger, not knowing what his grade was.
Tom, close out of it, Tom, and come back. We'll talk about it till you come back. How about that?
You're a masochist. That's what you are.
Oh,
That's what the word is.
Massive.
I had to look
because
at
I gave it such a low grade, I broke the machine.
Yeah, you broke Tom. That's what you broke.
I'll text him and tell him to go out and come back in.
Yeah, that's good. Listen. I feel guilty saying a 1. I mean, again, it's not my cup of tea.
That's fine, I think.
Up.
Oh, there he is.
Up this way. Up.
Sounds better already.
You guys see?
Hey, there he is.
Better.
Wow.
Much better.
I don't know what the hell happened there.
Cool. Did you hear my spiel?
Nope.
So I said it. I loved it. I've never read a book like this in one sitting in a very long time, and I gave it 9.4.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Did you hear mine?
Part of yours. I heard the beginning of yours. If you want to say it again, but
7.5.
7.5. All right.
And I'm giving it a 5.0.
Oh, he's going up.
Wait,
Because he feels
I
bad.
gave it a 1.0, right?
You can no
you
changing
heard that?
grades.
I heard
You,
that
you can't change it after you get it. It's cemented in stone. So what do you think, Tom?
I'm giving it a 9.8.
9.8. All right.
Yeah, I loved it. I think it was on a level that is not commonly hit by
I completely agree.
by comic books.
That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, so it is heavy subject matter. It's not your typical superhero stuff or whatever. It's not bright and bubbly at all, which I love that stuff too. But as a work of art, I think it's exceptional, and it's really worth people checking out. It's special. It's a special piece.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
If you're feeling down, maybe don't read it yet. Though.
Yeah.
Wait till you're feeling a little bit more happy about things.
Yeah. It's not Disney Plus. It's
And my 1.0 doesn't mean like people should read this, get their own feel, even if it's not your genre of type of stuff. At least give it a try. At the end of it, that's what I didn't like it. So, but you got to give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to see if it's your thing. But
I mean, just storytelling alone is just such a well-written story.
Yeah.
Listen, if someone should start now, you take 35 years, and you could probably tell just as brilliant a story.
Yeah,
Yep. That's all you need.
good stuff.
Do we have a closeout for a book club?
I don't think so.
Oh, do you want to make one up on the fly?
How about until we reach the next chapter?
I like
until the next cover opens. I like that one better. We'll go with until the next cover opens.
Cool.